Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone joining us, depending on where you are from around the world. My name is James Thomas, and I'm the Commercial Director for Metanoia. I'd like to welcome you to an introduction to Education for Sustainability, a webinar brought to you by Metanoia in partnership with Education for Sustainability pioneer, Jaimie Cloud, and the Cloud Institute for Sustainability Education. It's great to have so many educators able to join us today. We've had over 378 signups from 55 countries around the world, which just goes to show the level of interest in education for sustainability and the importance of this work. The numbers are creeping up. We're at around 66, but I'm sure we'll get up there to over 100. So the format of today's 60-minute webinar is as follows. To begin with, Anthony Dixon, Metanoia's founder and CEO, will make a few introductory remarks. Anthony will then introduce our keynote speaker today, Jaimie Cloud. Jaimie will speak for around 45 minutes with slides. And at the end of her presentation, Jaimie will field questions for around 15 minutes. And then to conclude today's session, Anthony Dixon will make some brief closing comments. As participants, you've all been placed on mute. If you'd like to ask any questions, please post it in the chat, and Jaimie will do her best to respond to as many of those as possible during the Q&A time. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Metanoia's founder and CEO, Anthony Dixon.
There we go. Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. I'm Anthony Dixon, the founder and CEO of Metanoia. For those of you who don't know us, we are a consulting business focused on sustainability and education for sustainability in schools. Our core offering is a whole school sustainability audit, a year-long student-centered review of all aspects of a school's life. The audit takes a deep look at 12 aspects of the school's daily life through the lens of sustainability. Not only the usual things like energy, food, water, and waste, but also things like governance for sustainability, sustainability communication, and of course, education for sustainability. The word metanoia is a Greek word meaning a transformation of heart and mind leading to a change of behavior. And it beautifully describes what can happen when students and whole school communities are effectively engaged in the sustainability learning opportunities that this work offers and that we seek to unlock. We're thrilled this evening to be hosting this webinar with Jaimie Cloud. Jaimie is a pioneer in the field of education for sustainability and the founder of the Cloud Institute for Sustainability based in New York. She has over 40 years of experience working with schools and school districts in the US and around the world with a focus on sustainability and how to educate for it. Since its founding more than 25 years ago, the Cloud Institute has been closely monitoring the evolving thinking and the skills of the most important champions of sustainability and transforming these ideas and skills into pedagogical systems and educational materials that inspire young people to think about the world and their relationship to it, and their ability to influence it in new ways. Importantly, Jaimie is the lead author of a seminal paper in 2016 entitled Educating for a Sustainable Future, Benchmarks for Individual and Social Learning. And she will speak about that later. It was published in the Journal of Sustainability Education and co-authored by 42 of the world's leading scholars and practitioners in this field. And that paper is arguably the closest thing there is today to a consensus view of the essential elements that define the field and practice of education for sustainability. So we're very privileged to have the opportunity to spend the next hour with Jaimie. And thank you, Jaimie, for your time this evening, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Anthony. This is the question that drives everything we do. What kind of future do we want? I have been working on this truthfully since the 6th grade, since I was in the 6th grade, tracking the state of the planet data. one of the first participants in the experiments in global education way back in the 60s. And always, we are asking ourselves, what kind of future do we want? What do we want to sustain? For whom? For how long? And what does education have to do with it? So that's the questions. Those are the questions that drive education for sustainability. And of course, that depends on the answers to those questions depend on what you think education is for. In the service of what do we get up so early in the morning? Why do we do it? If not to unleash young people's potential and sustain human and other life on the planet at the highest level, then what are we doing there? We like to imagine that there's a shared understanding that schools have a responsibility to contribute to our individual and our collective potential, and to that of the living systems upon which all life depends. That is our vision, and that is the vision of the school that we're working with. And to do that, to work towards a future like that, you have to have a particular kind of mindset. And we've identified several core mindsets that drive the thinking that actually can help us achieve a sustainable future. This is the first one. It's possible. We see a lot of other ways of thinking out there, but this one is core. It's a healthy and sustainable future is possible. So let's figure out how we're going to turn our ship around and head towards that future. What do we mean by sustainability? For some reason, that seems to plague people. The word has been around since, in this context, since the late 80s. It just means that we want to develop the capability to thrive over time. Another way of thinking about it is that it's a society that's far-seeing enough, flexible enough, and wise enough not to undermine either its physical or social systems of support. So a species that doesn't shoot ourselves in the foot. Makes sense. And so then we'd have to ask, well, are we shooting ourselves in the foot? This is a wonderful chart. It comes from the Journal of Ecological Economics, and it shows basically the green line is the GDP, the gross domestic product. So that's a total amount of economic activity over the last 50, 60 years or so. And then that purple line is basically the genuine progress indicator. So it's a quality of life indicator that includes all kinds of social and ecological data sets. And you can see that as that economic activity goes up globally, our quality of life and our ecosystems are not going in the same direction. There is an inverse correlation. And that is one of the symptoms of unsustainability. Here is a chart with several countries, economic activity, all going well, looking pretty good. Wait for it. Those are the quality of life indicators, according to the genuine progress indicator. There are many, many, many different sustainability indicators, and we track them all so that we can get a good pulse on what's going on out there, so we can make sure that we get things to go the way we want. Another mindset that's really useful here is that we are all responsible for the difference we make, because everything we do and everything we don't do makes a difference. I'm always working with educators, and when they say things like, I want my students to know they can make a difference. I say, it's not an optional kind of thing. We make a difference no matter what we're doing or not doing. And so that's really useful, and young people love that. It's a little bit daunting for adults, but that's okay. It's true nevertheless. Here is a little key to some of the indicators I'm going to show you now. We educate for sustainability. It's not always about sustainability, but we only need to understand what's unsustainable about the current reality so that we're motivated to change what we're doing. So you can see that all these different colors represent different sustainability indicators. The first two we've just looked at. The ecological footprint is the measure of supply and demand of biocapacity on the planet. the Life Satisfaction Index, the Human Development Index, and here they are. Yeah, I've just chosen a few slides, a few countries to demonstrate the GDP consistently rises as all of those other indicators are going in the other direction. There's the US, sorry, there's Australia, and there's China. And I have lots of these charts that we can look at over time as you all get excited about this work. And so these are just indicators that tell us that we need to change direction. We need to make a mid-course correction. And Barry Richmond, one of our great system dynamicists, said that all systems are perfectly designed to get the results they get. So if we're in this current reality, if we're in this situation, which is just our current reality, it's not our destiny, it's not our fate, but it is our current situation, then we designed for it, we bought and sold for it, we educated for it unintentionally. And it's worth noting that it's not the work of ignorant people. It's the work of extremely well-educated people, and many of them have advanced degrees. So if it isn't a lack of education that's gotten us here, we would argue that it is the education itself. And that's a huge opportunity for us because we have all the children and young people legally required to be with us in schools. And it's a huge point of leverage. And Einstein said many wonderful things, but one of them that we love is that the significant problems we face cannot be solved with the same thinking we used to create them in the first place. And education for sustainability is that different way of thinking that he was asking us to do. And it's already happening. So out there in the world, people have been working on this, specifically working on moving towards sustainability since well, you can start the clock anywhere you want, but at least since the late 80s. And so this is a beautiful chart that's already showing that countries are taking seriously continuing that economic growth. Of course, we want economic growth, but we want it. This is a chart that shows the decoupling of CO2 emissions with that economic growth. So how do we move toward a healthy and sustainable future and continue to live well and within the means of nature? So this is a great chart, and we want to make sure that young people know, look, there are a lot of people around the world that understand the situation and that are moving in this other direction, but we need everyone on deck. We need everyone playing their A game and everyone unleashing their potential and making their own unique contributions to this. This is a very simple version of our new economic model. We take that flow of exchange value that we've all seen in our economic textbooks, and we put that in the middle of this diagram, not because it's the most important place like a target, but because it's the system most dependent on the other systems. Try doing business without a contract or transportation systems, or a legal system or an education system or creativity. So all of our economic activity depends on the social and human capital, both of which depend on the natural capital upon which all life and all production depends. And of course, at the end of the day, it's all powered by the sun. And so if you look at it that way, then you want to make sure that your economic activity doesn't undermine the health of the very systems it depends on, as Danella Meadows was suggesting. 3 minutes on the way life works on Spaceship Earth. All systems in nature fluctuate, and those fluctuations are driven by all the usual suspects: sunlight, water, chemistries, nutrients, and so forth. The dynamic stability is the optimal state for a system potential. It's true for our brains, it's true for our bodies, it's true for our ecosystems. When phenomena exceeds the natural regenerative capacity of the system is severely impaired. So when you exceed thresholds, you are undermining the health of the system. When this happens, the time it takes for the system to return to dynamic stability could exceed the needs of those dependent on it to survive. And that's the situation that we're in at the moment. So for example, if you overfish, that fishery may come back over time, but maybe not within the time frame of the industry that has created that situation. We are part of the living systems. We are not separate from them. We're not in control, contrary to popular notion. We can adjust human consumption and human activity to the natural fluctuations. And I see my slide just, there we go. And one of the key principles of life that we want to make sure that all young people understand is that life organizes towards life. It's one of the core physical laws. Something or someone will prevail so far. So we've been through 5 near extinctions so far. Something always made it. The green cell created photosynthesis last time around, which created favorable conditions for us to be here. And we want to make sure to contribute to the health of those systems. Another mindset that is key to this work is that we need to live by the natural laws and physical laws and ecological principles. 2 out of every 1,000 people I speak to remember, for example, what the first law of thermodynamics is, the conservation law. And in case you're not one of the 2, that's the one that says that matter and energy don't appear or disappear on Earth. In other words, there is no such place as a way. And you can imagine how strange it is to invent a fictional location to throw things. We're the only species on the planet that makes a thing called waste that has no value in any other part of the system. And none of us wants that on our epitaph. We can do better. That's a design challenge. This is another way to describe where we are in our current reality. This is peak-to-peak restoration time of natural fluctuations, punctuated by the occasional disruption that creates the next cycles of life. This is where we are right now, still able to restore, but we're creating some delays in the system. And then this is the no-go zone, and we're not going there. We have all the children and young people in our care. We are not going there. We need to understand that healthy systems have limits. Limits are not a loss of autonomy. They are not scarcity. They are simply thresholds beyond which we do not want to go. We like to think of them as constraints that will drive creativity. And we want young people to think of limits as something you can tap the power of, like every entrepreneur. And this is an example of some systems that restore quite quickly and some systems that take a bit longer. This is a picture of the Himalayas from northern India. Some of you may have seen it during the last few years in the beginning. This was just a few weeks after everybody shut down when the pandemic started. Just a few weeks after everybody shut down. Now we want to keep those Himalayas in our sites, but we need to keep moving. And so how do we keep moving in a way that we can keep those mountains in our sightline? Here's China, again, a few weeks after COVID hit and after everything shut down. You can see that the pollution, the air quality just improved unbelievably in just a short amount of time. Now this is the big island of Hawaii, where a volcano erupted 25 years ago, and that's taken a bit longer. But over time, life starts popping through, and little by little, life organizes towards life, and you get a rich new ecosystem. And so we want to make sure that we're doing this in a timely way so that our children and our grandchildren and all of us can again unleash our potential. Why educate for sustainability? Well, if you like humans, it's a useful idea, because we have to learn how to live well in our places without undermining their ability to sustain us over time. And the foundations of our knowledge, skills, and habits of mind are cultivated in our schools. Again, for better or for worse. They spend an awful lot of time with us, and we can educate for the future we want. What does it look like? What does education for sustainability look like in students, in our policies, in our practices, in our curriculum and instruction? I'll start at the big picture level. We think of schools and communities learning and working together for the future we want. So we see schools as communities, and we see them nested inside their communities, because young people have a lot to offer right now, not 20 years from now when they grow up. Yes, then too, but right now. This is our framework. So we put learning at the core. And that is our students learning, but it's also all of us learning. Lifelong learning is, if that's something that you are passionate about, this is definitely your century. So learners nested inside classrooms of adults and young people learning together, nested inside schools with operations and physical plants and food and transportation. And that's why I partner with Metanoia, because that's the part that they are so strong at. And then those schools are nested in, the organizations are nested inside the physical plant. Sorry, I forgot the policies and practices, the leadership. Then the schools and the physical plant and operation, and all of that is nested inside our communities. And so that's the way we see it. This is the cover of our benchmarks document that Anthony referred to. And it again begins with the core, the thinking, the big ideas, the essential questions, the skills, the knowledge, how kids are applying what they're learning, their dispositions, all nested inside the instructional practices, next inside the organizations, nested inside the buildings and the communities and so forth. And so that's the metaphor, the nested systems metaphor is quite useful. We're systems thinkers, so we understand that all systems are nested in other systems. And another mindset that's quite useful to us, we are all in this together. We are interdependent on each other and on the natural systems upon which all life depends. Once you understand that, you operate differently. So here's what it starts to look like. I'll start at the very, very beginning in pre-K. We have schools out there working with 3- and 4-year-olds, just doing hydroponics and aquaponics and understanding the cycles of the fish waste and using that as fertilizer and growing things. Just learning how life works and how to grow things and beginning to understand. They're already learning about the Just Right books eventually as they get older, when they start reading. And so just the just right amount of sunlight and just right amount of foods. These are some kindergartners and first graders who are fighting on the playground in a school that was in Tucson that had been working on systems thinking for quite a long time. And the principal finally said, use some of that systems thinking to help them solve their problems. And so they used this causal loop diagram. And they said, you know, we're in a reinforcing loop. And they use that language. It's just gorgeous. You know, we have mean words, and then we have hurt feelings, and mean words and hurt feelings, and we're in a loop. And so then they decide that there are some ways that we could break the loop, and they're going to try those ways. And then at the end of this little story, one of the young men said, and if we say nice words and nice feelings, then we can flip it around so that it's actually a virtuous cycle instead of a vicious cycle. He doesn't use that language, but he says it could go well instead of going poorly. And that's great for a first grader. These young people have discovered, because their teacher gathered the pencils that had been left on the floor in their classroom for a week, and it was a huge pile of pencils, very wasteful. And so they did a whole study of where pencils come from and what they're made of, and they did a life cycle of the pencils, and then they decided to come up with a project to not waste any pencils and to just use the same pencil. Then they expanded it to their whole school, and then the custodians got involved, and they started helping them measure, change over time, which we love doing, especially when it's going well. And so that's how they did it. And so they eliminated wasteful pencils in their school as part of their curriculum. These young people, again, now we're in middle school. Those were all elementary school examples. Now we're in upper primary, if you will, depending on where you are in the world. This young woman is now 14, but when she was 10 years old, she shut down a coal burning plant in her town because she has asthma and all her friends have asthma. And so at the age of 10, she started a campaign and shut that down. Again, they will do it without us. Now, again, she didn't do that on her own. You don't get to hear about her teachers and everybody, all the adults that were behind her. They need us, but they do also need to make this mid-course correction. And so the more we're working with them, the better. These young people were 9 years old on the bottom there, and they got solar panels on all the public buildings in their town. And now they're about to save a forest in their local area. This young man in Germany is responsible for having over 1 billion trees planted worldwide. He was inspired by Wangari Maathai. Over 1 billion trees at the age of 9. And now he's a teenager and he's still going at it. And that was through a website that he had created. Again, not alone. These children are not on their own. They have teachers behind them, but all kids can be doing things like this. This is a secondary team. They got, this is in California, they banned plastic bags. Some countries, are doing this. Some states are doing this. Everybody knows now that they're ending up in the oceans and we have to do something differently. And so they took it upon themselves to take care of their own town. And this young woman started at a science fair in her 9th grade year, converting her school building from oil to wood chips. By the time she graduated, they had switched to pellets, and she saved her school $90,000 by the time she graduated. And then she got $20 million from the state legislature to open up a statewide initiative for pellet stoves. The switchgrasses were grown in state, so to boost the local economy. This is what young people are capable of. And again, it's the science, it's the math, it's the systems thinking, it's social emotional learning, it's leadership, it's participation, it's all the things we want for our young people, but it's real, it's authentic, it's project-based learning, it's everything we want, and it's also for now and for the future. And this one I'm going to play for you. This is a little 30-second video that I'm going to play.
The North Pacific Gyre, located between Asia and North America, is a large coagulation of litter caught in the ocean's currents. Operation Gyre 847 consists of 3 types of robots with special tasks. Collector bots gather trash both above and beneath the surface. When full, they deposit the trash into barge bot, which delivers the garbage to the ports of surrounding countries. At each port, a sorter bot sifts the accumulated debris. The recyclables will then be boxed up and trucked to recycling plants to be reused. From the Gyre, back to the buyer.
I love that. I love that because these are young people, 10th graders, 10th graders in the state of Oregon. And that was robotics, that was makerspace, that was math, IT. They combined lots of different disciplines. And so they created that video. Oh, animation was another thing they were learning. And then this young man in Europe, pretty much at the same time, actually did it. He created a boat to pick up the garbage in the Pacific Gyre. And he got $40 million to start up his company. And he was all of 19 when he started that. Now I think he's 23 or 24, boy on slot. Just amazing what young people can do because they don't know it's impossible. And so we want to make sure that we're not getting in their way and that we actually are contributing to their ability to thrive over time. I love that juxtaposition of the student work all over the world, young people doing this kind of thing. So these are the questions that we're always asking when we're in schools, when people want to do this kind of work. What are you already doing that you should keep doing? Because whether we call it education for sustainability or not, A lot of schools are already engaged in some aspects that contribute to sustainability education. So what are we already doing? Let's take a stock of what we're doing. What might we want to change? What do we need to stop doing? And what do we need to start doing? So we never throw, we never reinvent wheels. We start with our strengths, and then we work on our gaps and the things that we have to do. And we just, there's no beginning or end in a system. So you start where you can, and you just keep going from there. Schools that learn, this is our definition of what schools that learn means and looks like. It's where we're all encouraged to keep thinking, innovating, collaborating, talking candidly, improving our capabilities, self-correcting, and making personal commitments to a shared future. That's organizational learning. You might be familiar with Peter Sengi's Schools That Learn book. If you're not, it's a really great one. I happen to have a chapter in it, but you should read all the other chapters too. And the mindset for us here is that in the context of interdependence, self-interests are best served through mutually beneficial relationships. That's why Metanoia and the Cloud Institute work together, for example, because they work mostly on the physical plant and working with young people to educate them about the buildings and operations and energy and materials. And I'm on the teaching and learning side, educating for sustainability, which is about many, many things. So what are the challenges? How do we get over or around them? Because perseverance, obviously, is a key attribute, a key disposition. I've been at this, like I said, since I was a child, since I was 11 years old. And believe me, perseverance has been extremely useful in this journey. So what do we do? What are the challenges and how do we get around them? So one of the big challenges is people not thinking that this has anything to do with them. And this is one of our little thinking jokes. The folks at the top there thinking they'll be just fine. And of course, the irony here is that if you cut that boat in half, you don't actually get two boats. It's one boat and we're all in it. And that is something that we need to make sure everybody understands. No matter where you are on that boat, you need to work together to turn it around. This is another classic mindset of unsustainability. We call it the bummer. The kids call these folks the given ups. May none of us ever be called a given up by a child. Things are the way they are and there's nothing we can do about it. It's too late, it's game over. No, it's game on. Here's another way of thinking that drives unsustainable behavior. Let's just maximize gains for me, for myself, for my people, for my company. Now, everybody thinks that's what Adam Smith said. That's the free market, the invisible hand. But what he actually said was, we do that to produce the greatest benefit for society as a whole, and vice versa, parts to whole, whole to parts. But without that part, it's a mindset for unsustainability. So you never want to take apart whole quotes and just pick the part that's convenient for you. Here's another thing that gets in the way. And as you can see, it's really thinking, bad thinking that gets in the way more than anything else. Here is a little picture of the Emperor's New Clothes story. And if you don't know that story, it's about a king who was fooled into going out and marching in a parade with no clothes on, thinking that he was wearing a very special costume. And the only person that had the wherewithal to notice that and to speak about it was the child in the audience. He said, well, that king has no clothes on. The emperor has no clothes on. And of course, everyone else had been fooled. All the adults had been fooled. And that's another phenomena we're facing these days. The results of the fixed mindset, anytime you're stuck in your thinking, we operate without the information we need. We're ignorant and we literally cannot read the feedback. We call it believing is seeing, not seeing is believing. And Kevin Oxner, who's a brain scientist up at Columbia University, says, if we can't hear or see the feedback, we can't perceive relevant data for our brains to filter. And this is why we've gotten this far down the road of unsustainability before most people have even realized what's going on. We are not hardwired to read feedback that's removed in time and space, feedback being the results of our actions that we can't see. If we can't see it, we don't understand it. So that's where education can come in, because we can help people connect the dots between our thinking, our behavior, and the results of our behavior. We exhibit characteristics of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And our fixes backfire on us. The quick fixes always backfire. We like to say fast is slow in systems thinking. You're gonna pay for it over time. And it'll take a lot longer in the end. Or we shift the burden, which means we treat symptoms and then we make them worse over time and then create new problems. We're very good at all of that, but we could actually not be good at all of that and be more upstream thinkers, and we can do better, much better. So these are some of the ways that we can shift people's thinking. It's not easy, but it's actually quite easy to develop mindsets in schools. We all develop mindsets. So it's whatever we learn, and if we learn to be lifelong learners and learn to think about our thinking, then we can adjust accordingly. So the mindset, Piaget called it accommodation. He said, when you learn something that fits into your existing schema, you assimilate it. But if it requires you to shift your schema, then he called that accommodation. We call it paradigm shifting, mindset shifts. You can do that through experience, simulations, educational experiences, real life experiences. They take a little bit longer. By asking different questions. That's why we love inquiry, an inquiry approach to learning. Storytelling shifts people's thinking. The creative process. There are 9 brain-based strategies for helping people keep neuroplasticity alive and well in their brains. Some mindsets are easier to shift than others. And we like to say, ask Copernicus. He was the mathematician that discovered that the sun, the moon, and the stars do not actually revolve around us. Now, you can see that there are still people working with that. I don't pick on any particular group, but you might be interested to know that the Vatican conceded that maybe Copernicus was right in 1993. Yeah. So the ease of shift depends on how much your money, your status, and your identity are tied to your frame. So children don't have any of that, and they see what's actually there. The mindsets of children and young people change over time with new knowledge and applied insight. And so our challenge is, do our mindsets change over time with new knowledge and new insights? Can we be the lifelong learners we want them to be? This is the document, the benchmarks document. It is the closest thing we have to a consensus globally on what the key essential elements are in education for sustainability. I highly recommend you read that if you're interested in this field. You can get it on our website, cloudinstitute.org, or you can get it at the Journal for Sustainability Education's website. It is a high-level document, not in the weeds with performance indicators, but it is worth reading, and it reads like a novel. Now, this was the Cloud Institute's contribution to sustainability education, to that document, where we identified the core content areas. And in the benchmarks document, you'll notice that there's a relatively new content area for us to explore, which is the many ways of knowing. So the epistemology, and that, because every gender, every country, every culture has a way of knowing. And the more ways of knowing we access, the better off we're all going to be. Everybody has some clues. Nobody has everything they need. So together, we're better off. So this document is what we use when we innovate curriculum and instruction. We bake these performance indicators and enduring understandings right into the core content of curriculum and instruction. And some of the success measures that we have going out there, we need more data, we need more research in our field, but we have all the data that we have collected from Educators for Sustainability around the world report that, of course, we increase student achievement. And that's for a lot of reasons. It's academically rigorous, but it's also very hopeful, and kids are engaged and they come to school and they love it, and it's interdisciplinary. So of course we're improving their achievement, and even on their standardized tests. We have a contribution to their health, their well-being. They eat better as a result of this work. They increase their civic engagement. Teachers are happy. You know, happy teachers, happy life. Teacher practice improves. They're happy. They are really loving this work because, of course, because their students are engaged, and they're re-energized. School culture is improved, and then we are tracking the actual sustainability indicators, because if it doesn't actually improve the indicators of sustainability at the end of the day, then those other things aren't going to matter. So we want to be here to enjoy our success, and so we have some data that points to that. And so I am going to turn it over to James to explain this slide. Hit it, James.
Thank you, Jaimie. So in partnership with the Cloud Institute, Metanoia will be hosting a couple of 8-hour CPD accredited workshops led by Jaimie. These will be on the 9th and 10th of February. It's over 2 consecutive days from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. That's UAE time. And for the Asia Pacific region, we have the same 8-hour workshop split over 2 days on the 16th and 17th. This falls on a Thursday and a Friday, 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. And that's Hong Kong time, GMT +8. So if there is any interest in the room and you'd like to find out more information about those workshops, you can scan the QR codes on this screen. And as I mentioned before, we will be sharing with you a recording of today's session, and we'll send you a little bit more information about Metanoia and about Jaimie Cloud and the Cloud Institute. I'm going to hand over now to Anthony.
I think we're going to let's do Q&A first, because I wanted to make sure that people had a little chance to do that, right? We were going to do that first, and I jumped the gun. But I wanted to make sure that people know that we have further education for them. Go ahead, James. Do we want to do Q&A first?
Yeah, let's crack on with the Q&A, Jaimie.
Okay,
so,
let's
if
do
you
it.
have any questions for Jaimie, please put them in the chat, and Jaimie will do her best to answer as many as possible.
All right. It's fun, I can see everybody. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Students, I can see some. Anthony and James are going to help me track the questions, but I just saw that first one. Absolutely, students are invited. The more the inclusive participation of school community stakeholders, the better. And of course, the students are the #1 stakeholder. I would say, you know, if you have very sophisticated 6th year students and up, you know, sometimes, you know, I mean, I have 2nd and 3rd graders doing amazing things, but I think for the intro, I would say, you know, upper primary and secondary students, or very sophisticated younger ones. That's really up to you, whoever you think would be appropriate. It's not a lot about it's not a lot about unsustainability. That's a different field, educating about unsustainability. It's very much about what we need to do, how we need to think in order to get where we want to go. So James and Anthony, maybe you can help me. I can't see all of them.
Yeah, good question here from Luz. How is the framework implemented in schools? Is it embedded into other subjects or as a discrete subject?
Ah, great question. Yes, and mostly we are embedding these ways of thinking into the core curriculum across all disciplines and all grade levels. It is a way of thinking. It's a lens through which you understand everything. And so every discipline has a unique contribution to make. Every discipline. So it depends on what we usually do is in the same way that you would do a crosswalk with your academic standards or any requirements that you are asking of your school, of the curriculum. You would take a look at the framework for education for sustainability. You'd look at in terms of the curriculum, you would look at the core content standards, the enduring understandings or big ideas. And then you would say, well, where are these appropriate in what grade levels? Sometimes we'll start with the innovation diffusion theory as our model of change, our theory of change, where we start with early adopters who are ready to go, and they will choose the attributes, the performance indicators they want to work with. They embed them right into their units of study, into their instruction, into their assessments, into their performance criteria, and then we watch the magic. And then you get more and more cohorts and more people involved. It depends on who builds curriculum in the school or the region, but that's how we do it. Every discipline has a unique contribution to play. And we can talk more. We're going to talk more about that also in the 8 hour. We have 2 different theories of change that we work with because we want the whole school community involved over time, but you have to start somewhere. So we start where there are favorable conditions, which means where people are ready to go.
Another question, Jaimie, from Emily Armstrong. Do you have different approaches for different cultures? i.e. attitudes in the UAE can be quite different from the UK at times, for example.
Sure. Yes. One of our tenets is to trust local wisdom. So we work with you to figure out how it works there. This has to be culturally appropriate and relevant to the places, because we're all over the world. And so you all know how things work in your own countries. You know how change happens. You know where the leadership is. And so we would work with you to figure out how is this going to work in this place. The standards and indicators, you know, I was recently in Qatar, and everything I was saying, the teachers from the region would say, oh, we have a word for that in Arabic. Oh, that's one of the 99 names for God. Oh, the prophet says that. So, and we see that all over the world. No matter what culture we're in, it's resonating with traditional wisdom, with not so common sense, not so common anymore, but things that make sense to people. So it seems to be appropriate. So far, everywhere I've been, I've never found anyone who said, no, this doesn't make any sense. Hopefully that answered the question. Okay, James, ready for 1 or 2? Yeah, we have a little time. We said about 15 minutes, so that's good. Yay, I love having time. You want me to see if there's another?
No, so another question was, this is from Faywood. Does your CPD package include your curriculum development on EfS standards and performance indicators to implement a progressive curriculum in schools?
Yes, the actual standards and indicators are open source. So you can get them at cloudinstitute.org under the resources section, and the benchmarks are there as well. But yes, the 8 hour is the intro to sustainability and education for sustainability. After that, there are layers and layers of involvement that you can participate in. After that, we are working with schools and places all over the world, both of us, both Metanoia and Cloud Institute, over time. So I always say 3 to 5 years and then the rest of your life, because it's going to take that. And you're never going to be done. So, but it'll take at least a while to get your cohorts moving, to figure out how you want this implemented, where you want to embed it. It's different everywhere. I have a lot of exemplars. I was just in Hong Kong at the Chinese International School, and we started with a 2-day. They attended the 8-hour, and then I spent 5 days there in a curriculum design studio. So that's the way. And they've already done the audit with Metanoia, so they were already primed, and the students had already been engaged, and so it works. Sometimes people begin with the audit, and then they come around to teaching and learning. And sometimes people start with teaching and learning, and then they go out to the audit. Again, wherever you're ready to begin is where we're ready to begin with you.
Another question from Matt Barker. To what extent can we paint a positive picture of the future based on the sustainability paradigm shift so that we don't mislead students about the urgency to act?
Right, so that's a great question. Here's the thing. How long have we been saying we're in an urgent situation? I was 11 in 1968, and it was an urgent situation. At some point, people start thinking, well, how urgent could it be if nobody's doing anything about it? So, or if it's obvious that you know, people, that the entire world is not working on this. So that's not really helpful. What is helpful is to say, look, we need to think differently about how we live on this planet. And we have some ideas about that. And let's get started making the mid-course correction. We have all the children and young people with us. There are a lot of things already going on. We want to make sure that students are focused on getting involved in making the change. What happens when we educate about unsustainability, and there's a lot of that. I have another whole workshop on all the ways we're educating for unsustainability by educating about unsustainability, which shuts down neural pathways. It depresses children, it shuts them down, and they cannot think. We need them playing their A game. We need them all like those kids I just showed you, you know, saying, this is a problem, we need to do something about it. And then they do something about it. With the adults, young people and children working together is the highest form of youth leadership. And so we need them taking action, not dwelling on the problems. This is not problem-based learning. That is a problem in and of itself. This is project-based. This is future visioning. This is creating the future we want. And that is what pulls us. That's the magnet that pulls us. Because the more you dwell on the problem, the more you reinforce the thinking that caused the problem. So we're not sugarcoating it, but we are saying, you know, this is the current reality. Now let's head in a different direction, and do not, you know, don't go down that rabbit hole. I have graduate students whose professors are telling them it's game over. So they come into my class, the ethics of sustainability, very depressed and thinking it's game over. And they're designers for social innovation. And when they finally realize it's not game over, it is seriously game on, they say, well, what can we do? Well, you're designers, design something. You do you. Whatever you do, do it. But do it for a sustainable future. So that's how we do it.
A question from Chipalipo. Is there a platform on which schools can work together to share ideas on their efforts on EfS? And I guess this is also perhaps a question for Anthony. So I'll let Anthony also answer this.
So glad you asked. Yes.
Thanks for that question. I've noticed another question in the chat that has to do with how those of you who are interested to keep the connection with those other people on this call and with us, how you can take that forward. So this is a nice segue into some remarks I wanted to make about, well, I'll start with the Alliance for Sustainable Schools, because that directly addresses the question about a platform for networking and continuing to share this conversation. So the Alliance for Sustainable Schools is, in brief, a non-profit network of schools around the world that are committed to pursuing sustainability and working together to create sustainable communities. We are a growing network of schools, and we're focused on systems change in 5 areas that are really common to all schools when it comes to sustainability, or as Jaimie said, often it's systems of unsustainability at the moment. And they are school buildings, school buses, school uniforms, school food, and education for sustainability. So the Alliance was formed to offer a community of practice for practitioners, sustainability practitioners such as yourselves operating in schools, to share their learning and their experience and their best practice, to ask questions, to learn from each other, and to advance this field in collaboration between schools and among schools. The other thing that the Alliance does is advocacy work to try to shift these unsustainable systems to sustainable alternatives. And we do that by piloting sustainable alternatives on a small scale and demonstrating their feasibility in each of these areas. And then by replicating them throughout the network, scale up the impact that an individual feasible, sustainable alternative could have. And so we've done successful work already in the area of low carbon fuels in school buses, in keeping school uniforms out of landfill, in encouraging caterers to provide sustainable school lunches, and beginning to do work in collaboration with others on the subject of sustainable school buildings. And of course, a natural fit here with this today's webinar is the community of practice around education for sustainability, which is the fifth pillar on which the Alliance is focused. So I won't say more now, but if you're interested, there's an email on the following slide that you can speak to us directly, and we can take it forward.
Yeah.
These are the contact. This is the contact information. If I might just.
So we want to. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jaimie.
No, I was just going to say we're there for you. That's it wouldn't be fair to set you up and then leave you alone. We're here for you in whatever capacity that works for you.
And those of you who are interested in learning more about the consulting, sustainability consulting work of Metanoia in schools can also reach out to us at the same email address, schools@metanoia-eco.com. And the question that's just come across the chat is this only for schools in Asia? We're based in Hong Kong, but we're operating around the world. Jaimie's based in New York. We're currently working with clients in the Middle East, in Dubai, and in mainland China, in Beijing, as well as in Hong Kong. So we would love to speak to you wherever you are. And we've become adept at minimizing the carbon footprint of working with schools in different parts of the world by doing much of this work effectively in this format virtually.
Yeah, exactly. So any other questions that we can help you with at the moment? Like I said, if you want, or I think James mentioned it earlier, if you want to stay on for a bit longer, we can show you go a bit more deeper on services and things that we can do together. But we wanted to honor the time, the 1 hour magical timeline that Zoom seems to give us. But it's just it's a threshold beyond which we could go if you want. So any other questions before you go?
I've seen a few requests for slides. We will be able to share a recording of today's session, and I will send all of the registered attendees an email tomorrow with access to that link so that you can rewatch that again.
Yeah.
Jaimie, shall we move on to a couple of other slides, just to touch on a little bit more about the Alliance of Sustainable Schools?
Sure. So one thing we just wanted to make clear is that we've come together because we're interested in whole school and community sustainability. And we believe schools, the curriculum and instruction and the organizational learning and the physical plant need to be working together over time. So we each have our own unique contributions, and together we can be very useful. Again, where people start depends on where they want to start and where they're ready to start. So these are,
question,
go ahead.
interrupt your flow, Jaimie.
Yeah, it's okay.
Has asked, well, can I get some more successful stories of schools?
Sure. Let's see, there are several publications. What I will do is put a couple of recommendations for that in, I'll send those to James. So when he sends out the follow-up communications, you can look there. There's a few books with case studies now. I have some more stories that I could tell. But there are all over the world, there are folks that have been at this a long time, folks that are just starting. So we do have stories to tell, which is great. And it's slightly different everywhere.
Mention about Chinese International School, Jaimie, who you've obviously been engaged by, and they have done the audit with us. So perhaps I'll let Anthony talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. And
Sure.
so we'll start here. That's a good one for the audit.
So the case of Chinese International School is like really a great example of the journey that schools go. It's almost a textbook example. When we began work on the audit with the Chinese International School, which obviously is an international school with an IB curriculum here in Hong Kong, they, like many schools, were doing a few fragmented things and had been doing those things for a long time with respect to sustainability, but lacked a kind of coherent framework for taking it forward. They lacked a long-term vision or plan, and they didn't have any data on the environmental footprint of the school. So the audit was a great place, as Jaimie said, not the only place, but certainly a great place to start. And we began working with the students and the leadership team to develop that benchmark for them. So our audit, which is represented in this wheel here, consists of 12 modules. The outcome of the audit, and we work on all of these modules with the students during the course of an academic year, and we produce at the end of it roughly 300-page report. So it's very rigorous and detailed deep dive into each of these 12 aspects of the school's life, and the students are involved in throughout the year in analyzing the data, in gathering the data, in communicating the story that the data tells about the sustainability of their school, and then in helping us craft recommendations for the school to implement in future years. And so we were retained in subsequent years to help the school implement, and they have really gone from, zero to hero in the 3 or 4 years since they finished the audit. They've really the school community, and they would say this is not just my spin on it, have transformed themselves. Everybody's talking about sustainability. People are aware of it. People are thinking deeply about it. The students are even more engaged than they were at the beginning. And they've recently committed at the board level in a very public way to becoming a zero carbon school as part of their long-term strategy. And then they were introduced to Jaimie, and Jaimie has picked up the baton and is now working very closely with dozens of teachers in mentoring and professional learning opportunities around design, curriculum design that follows the principles of EfS that she's been talking about this evening. And that's a 3-year commitment on the part of the school to integrate sustainability into their teaching and learning with Jaimie. So it's a very exciting transformation to have been a part of and to have witnessed, and it's ongoing, of course. But it's really I think I consider them to be one of the poster childs for this work and what's possible.
Mm-hmm. The leadership team came with faculty to the 8-hour. We offered it a couple of different times. We offer them periodically throughout the year. And so that was key, that the leadership team was involved. 26 teachers signed up for the first cohort, which is a lot. And so I spent a week with them, what we call sustainabilizing the curriculum. And by the way, Metanoia and Cloud Institute have been working also with the IB folks in The Hague, because they are also interested in sustainabilizing IB. So that'll make life a lot easier for everybody who teaches the IB curriculum, or uses the framework. The Qatar Foundation also engaged us we started in that case, we started with curriculum and instruction. Oops, sorry to give you a headache. They had me out there. I've been working with folks there. They have about 17 schools that are engaged. They went through the 8-hour online because we had to do that in the last couple of years. And then I went out there and spent several days. So we started there, and now they're talking to Metanoia about doing their piece of it. So again, it starts wherever people want to start. Let's see, is there anything? Oh yeah, that's the Alliance slide. Anything else that we can
there's a question about just to clarify the dates of the 2 8-hour workshops. Can you put that slide up again?
We'll do that. Yeah.
So again, the workshop on the left on the 9th and 10th of February is designed to be convenient for the UAE time, and it's in the 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. in the UAE time zone. Other people are welcome to join, but it may not be the most convenient time zone for you. And then the workshop on the right is on the 16th and 17th of February, is targeted at people in the Hong Kong time zone, and it will take place in Hong Kong time between 1 and 5 p.m. Again, if those dates are more convenient to you, welcome to join. You don't have to be in Hong Kong to join it, but the time is 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Hong Kong time on those days.
Right. All right, James, you're tracking the chat, so you're going to help us find the right moment to close this chapter so we can open up the next one.
Yeah, I think we can move on, Jaimie, to where we were before.
Okay.
And just to reiterate that, I will send through information with regards to the Eventbrite pages. So for both of those workshops on the 9th and 10th and on the 16th and 17th, so remember it's over 2 consecutive days, those workshops are live on Eventbrite. So if you go onto Eventbrite and you type in Foundations of Education for Sustainability, you can find it. I will send through information about these workshops tomorrow via email, so don't worry.
Thank you all so much for spending an hour of your life with us. We can't think of anything better to do, or we would be doing it. This is just so critical as far as we're concerned, and it's beautiful, beautiful work. So thank you, and I hope to see you all down the road.
Thank you, Jaimie, and thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.